Colonel James Walker had ridden through that road dozens of times before. The dirt path cut through endless sugarcane fields, stretching under the southern sun like an ocean of sharp green blades. It was a quiet road, the kind that existed far from cities, far from judgment, far from memory. Or so he believed. That afternoon, James was not alone. Beside him, riding slowly on another horse, was Emily Carter. Young. Beautiful. Laughing softly as the wind played with her hair. She looked completely out of place in that landscape, like a painting hung on the wrong wall. Her clothes were clean, her posture light, untouched by the weight of rural life. "You always get so quiet out here," she said, smiling. James forced a small smile back. "I like the silence." That was a lie. The silence didn't calm him. It haunted him. They rode in comfortable distance, the rhythmic sound of hooves pressing into dry soil. The sun was high, heat pressing down like a reminder of everything James tried to forget. Then it happened. James pulled the reins suddenly. The horse stopped so abruptly that Emily nearly lost her balance. "James?" she asked, confused. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. His body had frozen. His breath caught in his throat as if the air itself had turned solid. There, just ahead, walking slowly along the edge of the field, was Sarah. Sarah Walker. His ex-wife. Pregnant. Very pregnant. Her dress was faded and loose, clinging awkwardly to a body shaped by work and burden. Sweat darkened the fabric along her back. Her hair was tied hastily, strands escaping and sticking to her face. And on her shoulders, bent under the weight, were bundles of freshly cut sugarcane. Heavy. Sharp. Merciless. She walked with effort, one step at a time, her posture curved not only by pregnancy, but by life itself. James felt something inside him crack. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like something that had already been broken long ago, finally giving way. Emily followed his gaze. She frowned slightly. "Who is that?" James couldn't answer. Because the truth was standing there, breathing, sweating, carrying weight, and it looked nothing like the version of life he had chosen. Sarah hadn't seen him yet. She adjusted the cane on her shoulder, winced slightly, then continued walking. There was no weakness in her expression, only exhaustion and stubborn dignity. James felt his chest tighten. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be pregnant. She wasn't supposed to be carrying sugarcane under the southern sun while he rode past on a horse with a young woman beside him. Emily shifted uncomfortably. "James, do you know her?" He swallowed hard. "Yes." Emily turned to him. "Who is she?" His voice came out rough, unfamiliar even to himself. "My ex-wife." Emily's smile faded. "Anne, is she?" "Yes," he said before she could finish. "She's pregnant." Emily looked back at Sarah, then down at her belly, then back at James. The silence stretched between them. "Is it yours?" James didn't answer. Because the truth didn't need words. Sarah finally looked up. Their eyes met. For a split second, time collapsed. No sound. No movement. Just recognition. Sarah stopped walking. She didn't drop the sugarcane. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply looked at him. And in that look was everything James had run from: betrayal, abandonment, survival, and a strength he had underestimated. James dismounted without thinking. Emily called after him, "James, what are you doing?" He didn't respond. He took one step toward Sarah. Then another. Sarah's jaw tightened. "So," she said finally, her voice calm but edged like steel. "This is where you disappeared to." James opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The colonel who had commanded men, faced gunfire, and stood unbroken under pressure, couldn't form a sentence. Sarah adjusted the sugarcane on her shoulder. "You shouldn't be here," she continued. "Not like this." Emily remained by the horse, suddenly aware she didn't belong in this moment. James finally spoke. "You shouldn't be carrying that." Sarah laughed, once. Bitter. "And you shouldn't have left." Silence fell again. The sugarcane rustled in the wind. James looked at her belly. "How far along are you?" he asked quietly. Sarah's eyes hardened. "Far enough to know I didn't need you." That was the moment James understood. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a reckoning. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. For several seconds, none of them moved. The horses shifted their weight impatiently. The wind passed through the sugarcane, producing a dry whisper that sounded almost like judgment. Somewhere far off, a bird cried, sharp and lonely. James Walker stood in front of Sarah as if he were facing a ghost. Not the kind that disappears, but the kind that stays, reminding you of every mistake you ever made. Emily remained behind, frozen on her horse, suddenly unsure of where to place her eyes. She had known James was divorced. She had known there was a past. What she hadn't known was how alive that past still was. Sarah was the first to break the silence. "You look surprised," she said, her voice controlled, steady. "Did you think I'd vanish?" James swallowed hard. "No. I didn't expect to see you like this." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Like what? Alive? Working? Pregnant?" She shifted the weight of the sugarcane again, and James instinctively stepped forward. "Let me take that," he said quickly. "You shouldn't be carrying." "Don't," she cut him off. "Don't touch it. And don't pretend you suddenly care." Her words hit harder than any slap could have. Emily finally dismounted, carefully, like someone stepping onto fragile ground. "James," she said softly. "Maybe we should." Sarah turned her head and looked at Emily for the first time. The young woman straightened instinctively. Sarah took her in with one slow glance, the clean clothes, the soft hands, the absence of sunburn, of calluses, of fatigue. Understanding dawned immediately. "So," Sarah said. "This must be the reason you didn't come back." Emily flushed. "I didn't know." Sarah lifted a hand. "You don't owe me anything." Then she turned back to James. "You, on the other hand." James felt the weight of every unspoken word pressing against his chest. "I didn't know you were pregnant," he said. "If I had." "If you had what?" Sarah interrupted. "Stayed. Loved me again. Played farmer for a little longer." "That's not fair," he said weakly. She laughed again, but this time there was no bitterness, only exhaustion. "Fair?" she repeated. "You left. You chose a different life. That was your right. But don't come back now pretending this was an accident." James looked at her belly again, his voice barely above a whisper. "How far along?" Sarah hesitated, just a fraction, then answered. 7 months. The number landed between them like a verdict. James did the math instantly. 7 months. They had separated 8 months ago. There was no room for doubt. His heart began to pound violently. "It's mine," he said. Sarah didn't deny it. She simply looked at him. Emily's breath caught. She took a step back, as if the ground itself had shifted under her feet. "You never told him?" Emily asked quietly, almost to herself. Sarah turned to her. "I tried." James's head snapped up. "What?" "I came to your house," Sarah continued. 3 weeks after the divorce papers were signed. "I knocked on your door. James stared at her. I never. You weren't the one who answered, she said. Emily went pale. I did, Emily whispered. Sarah nodded slowly. You told me he was busy. That he was building a new life. That he didn't want to see me. Emily opened her mouth, then closed it again. James felt the ground drop away beneath him. Why didn't you tell me, he demanded, turning to Emily. I didn't know she was pregnant, Emily said defensively. She didn't say anything. Sarah's eyes flashed. Because you didn't let me speak. Silence fell again, heavier than before. James rubbed his face with his hands. The realization was crushing. She had come. She had tried. And he had never known. You should have come back, he said to Sarah, his voice breaking. You should have told me. Sarah straightened, despite the weight she carried. No, she said firmly. I had already been replaced. 3 weeks, James. 3 weeks and you were already riding around with someone else. Emily looked down, guilt etched into her face. I wasn't going to beg, Sarah continued. I wasn't going to humiliate myself or my child. I decided I'd raise him alone. Our child, James corrected softly. Sarah's expression hardened. I've been carrying him. Feeding him. Working for him. Waking up every night feeling him move. Don't take that away from me with a word. James nodded slowly. You're right. I don't deserve that. He glanced at the sugarcane again. Why are you working like this? He asked. You shouldn't be doing heavy labor. And who was supposed to do it? Sarah asked. The land doesn't wait. The bills don't wait. Life doesn't stop because I'm pregnant. She bent to pick up the fallen cane. James stepped forward and gently grabbed her arm. Please, he said. Let me help. Just this. She hesitated. For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. Finally, she let go. James lifted the sugarcane, surprised by its weight. His jaw clenched as realization settled in, she had been carrying this, alone, for months. Anger surged through him. Not at her. At himself. Emily took another step back. She could feel it now, the shift, the invisible line being drawn. We should go, she said quietly. James didn't look at her. You go, he replied. I need to stay. Emily's eyes widened. James, we have plans. Dinner with my parents. You'll go alone. The words were calm. Final. Emily stared at him, stunned. This is because of her, she said sharply. This is because of my son, James replied. Emily mounted her horse, her face burning with humiliation and fury. Without another word, she turned and rode away, disappearing into the dust. Sarah watched her go. You didn't have to do that, she said. I did, James replied. I should have done it a long time ago. He carried the sugarcane toward the barn. Sarah followed slowly, her hand resting on her belly. When they reached the shade, James dropped the load and turned to her. We need to talk, he said. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about. She looked at him, tired beyond words. You chose your life, she said. Now let me live mine. James felt fear then, real fear. Not of losing money. Not of losing reputation. But of losing the chance to do what was right. As Sarah turned away, James understood one thing with painful clarity. This wasn't about going back to the past. It was about whether he would finally show up, or disappear forever. If this story is moving you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. This journey is just getting started. James Walker did not sleep that night. He returned to town long after sunset, riding alone, the rhythmic sound of the horses' hooves echoing down the empty dirt road. The countryside that had once felt peaceful now pressed in on him, heavy with memories he had tried, and failed, to bury. Every image replayed itself in his mind. Sarah's bent posture. The weight of the sugarcane. Her calm, wounded eyes. The number she had spoken, 7 months. 7 months. Back in his rented house, James removed his coat and dropped it onto a chair without caring where it landed. The place felt sterile, lifeless. No smell of earth. No warmth. No sense of belonging. He poured himself a glass of whiskey but didn't drink it. The glass remained untouched on the table as he stared at the wall, his thoughts spiraling. He had wanted more. More land. More influence. More recognition. And in chasing that more, he had abandoned the one thing that had ever felt real. Sarah. And now, a child. His child. Meanwhile, several miles away, Sarah lay awake as well. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, one hand pressed against her belly, the other gripping the worn quilt. The baby shifted inside her, as if sensing her unrest. "It's okay," she whispered softly. "Mama's here." But she wasn't okay. Seeing James again had reopened wounds she had spent months forcing herself to ignore. She had built walls, strong ones, but the moment he stood in front of her, those walls had cracked. She didn't regret her choice. But that didn't mean it hadn't been painful. The following morning, Sarah was already awake before dawn. She moved slowly, carefully, preparing coffee over the small stove. The farm still needed tending, pregnancy or not. She stepped outside just as the sky began to lighten. And froze. James was standing near the fence. He looked out of place, his clothes dusty, his posture uncertain. Not the confident man who had ridden beside a young girlfriend the day before, but someone stripped bare by reality. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked. "I told you," he said quietly. "I wasn't going to disappear again." She crossed her arms instinctively. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he replied. "But I need to be." She turned away, walking toward the barn. After a moment's hesitation, he followed. They worked in silence at first. James fixed a broken latch, tightened loose boards, did whatever he could find. He didn't complain. Didn't ask questions. Sarah watched him from a distance. Part of her wanted to scream at him to leave. Another part, one she hated acknowledging, noticed how natural it still felt to see him working the land. By midday, sweat soaked his shirt, his hands raw and blistered. "You don't have to prove anything," she said finally. "I know," he replied. "I'm not trying to prove. I'm trying to take responsibility." She stopped what she was doing and faced him. "And what does that look like to you, James?" she asked. "Sending money? Visiting once a month? Bringing your city life out here like it belongs?" He shook his head. "I don't know yet. But I know what it doesn't look like." "And what's that?" "Running away." Sarah studied him, searching for something, anything, that would tell her this wasn't another phase. "I don't trust easy words," she said. "I trusted you once." "I know," he replied. "And I don't expect trust now." She nodded slowly. "Good." That afternoon, word began to spread. Rural communities didn't need newspapers. All they needed was a pair of eyes and a loose tongue. By evening, people were already whispering. "Did you see James Walker back at Sarah's place? After everything he did? Men like that don't change." Sarah heard it all. She always had. What surprised her was James's reaction. The next morning, an older neighbor approached him near the road. "You got nerve coming back here," the man muttered. James didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. "I deserve that," he said simply. The man blinked, thrown off by the response. Days passed. James stayed. He repaired fences, cleared land, hauled supplies, took on the heaviest work without being asked. He slept in the barn loft, never assuming more. At night, Sarah lay awake, listening to the sounds of him moving around outside, wondering how long it would last. Emily, on the other hand, was unraveling. Back in town, humiliation burned through her like acid. She avoided social gatherings, avoided questions, avoided mirrors. Her parents noticed. "This is not acceptable," her father said sharply. "You don't lose a fiancé to a farm woman." Emily snapped back, "She's not just a farm woman. She's carrying his child." Silence followed. That night, Emily made a decision. If James was choosing his past, then she would make sure it cost him his future. Business partners began withdrawing. Invitations dried up. Rumors spread quietly, effectively. James felt it immediately. Letters went unanswered. Deals stalled. But for the first time, he didn't panic. He stood in the field beside Sarah, watching the sun dip below the horizon, and realized something shocking. None of it mattered. Not compared to this. One evening, Sarah finally spoke. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Why not before?" James took a long breath. "Because before, I thought success would fill the emptiness. Now I know it won't." She looked at him. "And if you regret this later?" "Then I'll regret it here," he said. "Not alone." The baby kicked again. Sarah placed her hand over her belly. "You don't get to be half a father," she said. "You understand that?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "You don't get to leave when it's hard." "I won't." She turned toward him. "You don't get to ask for forgiveness." "I know." Silence stretched between them. Finally, she nodded once. "Then stay. For now." James felt something loosen inside his chest, not relief, but responsibility settling into place. That night, for the first time in months, he slept. If this story is holding your attention, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Every chapter brings us closer to the truth of what really matters. The first week James stayed on the farm felt longer than an entire year. Not because of the work, his body welcomed the exhaustion, but because of the silence between him and Sarah. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't cold. It was cautious, like an animal that had been hurt before and now watched every movement carefully. James understood. Trust, once broken, didn't return just because someone said the right things. It returned through time. Through consistency. Through actions repeated day after day. He woke before sunrise every morning, without fail. Sometimes Sarah was already up, sometimes she wasn't. He never assumed. Never crossed boundaries. He made coffee, left it on the table, then went outside to work. Fixing fences. Repairing tools. Clearing old debris near the barn. The land remembered him, even if Sarah still wasn't sure she did. One morning, Sarah watched him from the kitchen window as he struggled with a rusted gate. His hands slipped, scraped, bled, and still he kept going. "You're doing it wrong," she said suddenly, stepping outside. He looked up, surprised. "You have to lift the hinge first," she added. "Not force it." He nodded and followed her instructions. The gate opened easily. "Thanks," he said. She shrugged. "You used to know that." "I forgot a lot of things," he admitted. She didn't answer. That afternoon, Mrs. Evelyn Parker stopped by. Evelyn had lived in the valley her entire life. She had seen marriages begin and end, fortunes built and lost, men come and go. She looked at James with narrowed eyes. "So you're back," she said plainly. "Yes, ma'am. For good." James paused. For as long as I'm needed. Evelyn looked at Sarah, then back at him. You break her heart again, and I'll break your legs, she said calmly. Sarah sighed. Evelyn. I mean it, Evelyn continued, unfazed. This woman carried a child alone while you chased dreams that didn't include her. James met her gaze. I know. And I'm not running again. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. She muttered. We'll see. And with that, she left. That night, Sarah sat on the porch, watching the stars. James joined her, careful to keep distance. You didn't have to let her talk to you like that, she said. I deserved it. Sarah looked at him. You really think punishment is enough? No, he replied. But I think accountability is a start. She nodded slowly. The baby kicked. James noticed immediately. Is he? Yes, she said. He does that a lot at night. Can I? He asked hesitantly. She hesitated. Then nodded. James gently placed his hand on her belly. The movement beneath his palm was sudden and strong. His breath caught. That's him, Sarah whispered. James's eyes filled instantly. I missed so much, he said. You did, she replied. But you're here now. That night, something shifted, not forgiveness, but recognition. The following days tested him more than he expected. Not physically. Emotionally. People stared. Whispers followed him through town. Old business partners crossed the street to avoid him. One afternoon, a man he had once worked with sneered openly. Funny how fast ambition disappears when responsibility shows up, the man said. James didn't respond. He had stopped defending himself. That evening, a letter arrived. Emily. Sarah noticed the envelope in James's hand. You don't have to explain, she said quietly. I want to, he replied. He opened it. The words were sharp, bitter, controlled. Emily wrote of betrayal. Of humiliation. Of sacrifices made for nothing. She warned him he was ruining his future for a woman who would never forgive him. James folded the letter slowly. And? Sarah asked. And she's right about one thing, he said. I did ruin a future. Sarah waited. Just not the one that mattered. He threw the letter into the fire. Sarah watched the paper curl into ash. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away either. A few days later, James sold his townhouse in the city. The money wasn't much after debts were paid, but it was enough. When Sarah found out, she confronted him. You didn't need to do that, she said. I did, he replied. If I'm here fully. And if this doesn't work, she asked. Then I'll still be a father. Still be present. She searched his face. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. That night, Sarah cried quietly in her room, not from pain, but from fear. Hope was dangerous. Hope had cost her before. But this time felt different. The next morning, she found James asleep on the porch bench, clearly too tired to make it to the barn loft. A blanket had slipped off him in the night. She covered him without waking him. When he stirred later and realized what she had done, his chest tightened. That small gesture meant more than words ever could. A week later, Sarah went into town for supplies. James offered to come, but she declined. I can manage, she said. When she returned, she found the porch repaired, the steps reinforced, and a new railing installed. You didn't ask me, she said. I know, he replied. But you'll need it soon. She ran her hand along the smooth wood. Thank you, she said softly. That night, she finally asked the question she'd been holding back. Why did you want more so badly, she asked. Back then. James stared at the dark field. Because I was afraid, he said. Afraid of being ordinary. Afraid of ending up like my father, respected but distant. Powerful but alone. And now I'm afraid of missing bedtime stories. She laughed despite herself. It was the first real laugh in months. You've changed, she admitted. I had to lose everything to see what mattered, he said. Sarah rested her head back against the chair. You don't get unlimited chances, she said quietly. I know, James replied. But this one, she continued, this one might be real. James didn't speak. He didn't need to. For the first time, staying wasn't a promise. It was a choice. If this story is resonating with you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. These stories are about second chances, and the courage it takes to earn them. The land had a way of remembering things people tried to forget. James felt it every morning when he stepped barefoot onto the cold dirt, when the smell of damp soil rose after the night dew, when his hands wrapped around tools he once thought he'd outgrown. This land remembered him, not as a colonel, not as a man of influence, but as someone who had once worked until his back ached and his hands cracked. Sarah noticed the change before she wanted to admit it. James no longer moved like a visitor. He moved like someone who belonged, cautious, respectful, but steady. He anticipated problems before they arose. Fixed things before being asked. Learned again the quiet language of the farm. One afternoon, while repairing a section of fence near the north field, James paused and stared at the horizon. This is where we argued, he said suddenly. Sarah looked up from the basket she was carrying. About the expansion? He nodded. I wanted to buy more land. Take loans. Hire managers. Turn this place into something bigger. And I wanted to keep it alive, she replied. Not profitable. Alive. James smiled sadly. You were right. Sarah adjusted her grip on the basket. We were different people then. I was, he corrected gently. That night, Sarah sat at the small table, sorting receipts and accounts. James hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak. You don't have to help with that, she said. I want to learn how you've managed, he replied. You kept this place running alone. She sighed. Barely. They went through the numbers together. The truth was harsh. No surplus. No cushion. Every storm, every broken tool, every unexpected expense had been a threat. James felt shame burn deep in his chest. I left you with nothing but responsibility, he said quietly. Sarah didn't deny it. I learned to be strong because I had no choice. He looked at her. You shouldn't have had to. I know. That night, James made another decision. The following week, he sold the last of his city investments, the ones he'd been clinging to, just in case. The money wasn't enough to transform the farm, but it stabilized it. When Sarah realized what he had done, she confronted him again. You keep making big decisions without talking to me, she said. You're right, he admitted. I'm trying to fix things too fast. She folded her arms. This isn't about fixing. It's about building, together. He nodded. Then teach me how to do it right. She hesitated. Then she handed him the ledger. Start here. It was a quiet moment, but powerful. For the first time, she wasn't just letting him stay. She was letting him participate. Meanwhile, Emily's influence continued to ripple through the town. James's name became a cautionary tale. He chose dirt over destiny. He threw everything away for a woman who'll never trust him. Some said it with scorn. Others with envy. James heard it all, and let it pass. One evening, Sarah returned from town visibly upset. What happened? James asked. Mrs. Collins told me I was foolish for letting you back, she said flatly. Said men like you don't change. James clenched his fists. What did you say? Sarah looked at him. I told her I wasn't trusting words. I was watching actions. James exhaled slowly. That night, the baby kicked harder than usual. Sarah winced, gripping the edge of the bed. James was at her side instantly. Is something wrong? No, she breathed. Just, strong tonight. He knelt beside her, worry etched across his face. I'll be here, he said. For all of it. She met his gaze. I know. A storm rolled in 2 days later, sudden and violent. Wind tore through the fields. Rain hammered the roof. James was outside when the first fence post snapped. He ran, soaked and struggling, reinforcing what he could while Sarah watched from the doorway, fear twisting in her chest. Get inside, she shouted. Almost done, he yelled back. A branch fell, narrowly missing him. Sarah's heart pounded. For the first time, she realized how deeply she cared whether he came back inside. When the storm passed, the farm stood battered but intact. James stumbled inside, drenched, exhausted. Sarah wrapped a blanket around him without thinking. Don't do that again, she whispered. He looked at her, surprised. I thought you'd be angry. I was terrified, she admitted. Something unspoken passed between them. Fear had replaced resentment. And fear only came when something mattered. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, listening to James's quiet breathing from the other room. She remembered the man she had married, the one who danced with her in the kitchen, who sang while working, who held her hand at night. She had lost him once. Was she brave enough to risk losing him again? The baby shifted. She placed a hand on her belly. What do you think? She whispered. As if answering, the baby kicked. The next morning, Sarah asked James to sit with her on the porch. We need to talk, she said. He nodded immediately. Okay. I'm not promising forgiveness, she began. And I'm not promising love. I understand. But I'm also not pushing you away anymore, she continued. Not unless you give me a reason. James's throat tightened. That's more than I deserve, he said. Don't make me regret it, she replied. I won't. From that day on, something changed. They shared meals. Laughed quietly. Planned small things together. Not dreams of greatness. Dreams of stability. Of safety. Of bedtime routines and future harvests. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Sarah spoke again. If you leave again, she said softly, it will break me. James took her hand. Then I'll stay, he replied. Even when it's hard. She squeezed his fingers. Especially then. The land watched. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel abandoned. If this story is touching you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. These are stories about love tested by time, and rebuilt by choice. As Sarah's pregnancy advanced, time seemed to move in two different rhythms. The days were long, filled with routine, work, and quiet cooperation. But the nights felt short, heavy with thoughts neither of them voiced aloud. James noticed every change in her body. The way she walked more slowly. The way she paused to catch her breath. The way her hand instinctively found her belly whenever she sat down. Each of those moments reminded him of how close he had come to missing everything. One afternoon, Sarah nearly lost her balance while carrying a bucket of water. James caught it just in time. That's it, he said firmly. No more heavy work. I'm not helpless, she snapped automatically. I know, he replied calmly. But you don't have to be strong alone anymore. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Slowly, she nodded. From that day on, James took over the heaviest tasks without question. He woke earlier, worked longer, and never complained. His body ached constantly, but the ache felt earned. Fatherhood, he was learning, began long before a child was born. The baby responded to his presence in ways that startled him. When James spoke, the movement inside Sarah's belly often changed, as if the child recognized the sound. "He knows you," Sarah said quietly one night. James smiled. "I hope so." "You're here," she replied. "That matters." The town continued to watch. Some skeptically. Some curiously. Some with softened hearts. Old Mr. Thompson, who had once refused to sell James supplies, now nodded respectfully when they crossed paths. "You working honest now," the man said gruffly. "Good." James accepted the comment without pride. He didn't need approval. He needed consistency. Emily's name surfaced less and less. When it did, it carried no power anymore. One evening, a letter arrived from a former associate offering James a chance to return to business, discreetly, quietly, without scandal. James read it twice. Then folded it and placed it in the drawer. Sarah noticed. "You don't want to go back?" she asked. "I don't want to leave," he replied. She studied him carefully. "Even if staying costs you everything else?" "Yes." That answer mattered more than any promise he could have made. A week later, Sarah woke in the middle of the night with sharp pain. James was awake instantly. "What is it?" "I think, something's different," she said, breathing carefully. His heart raced. "Is it time?" "Not yet," she replied. "But soon." From that night on, James barely slept. He stayed alert, listening for every sound, watching her movements, learning the rhythm of her breathing. He fetched the midwife personally and spoke to her with a seriousness that surprised even himself. "She'll need you calm," the woman told him. Not panicked. "I'll be calm," he said. "I promise." The final days before the birth were quiet but tense. Sarah moved little. James stayed close. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sky darken, Sarah spoke softly. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Of the birth?" James asked. "No. Of doing it alone." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry you ever had to feel that way." She turned to him. "You're here now. That's what matters." The baby arrived sooner than expected. It began before dawn, with Sarah gripping James's arm and whispering his name. "It's time." James's hands shook as he helped her inside. The midwife arrived quickly, calm and commanding. "Breathe," she instructed Sarah. "Slow and steady." James stayed beside her, holding her hand, whispering encouragement. "You're strong," he told her. "You can do this." She cried out in pain, not weakness, but effort. Hours passed. James lost track of time completely. Then came the sound that changed everything. A cry, loud, strong, alive. "It's a boy," the midwife announced. Sarah wept openly. James felt his knees weaken. The baby was placed gently in Sarah's arms. She looked at the child, trembling, overwhelmed. "James," she whispered. He stepped forward, afraid to breathe. "Do you want to hold him?" she asked. He nodded, unable to speak. The baby was warm. Real. Perfect. James stared at the tiny face, the small clenched fists. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." The child slept peacefully. In that moment, James understood something profound. This wasn't about redemption. It was about responsibility. About presence. About choosing love every day, even when it was inconvenient, uncomfortable, or costly. Later that night, when everything had quieted, James sat alone on the porch. The sky was clear. The land was silent. Sarah joined him, moving carefully. "He looks like you," she said. James smiled softly. "I hope he grows up better than I was." She placed her hand over his. "He will," she said. "Because he won't grow up wondering where his father is." James closed his eyes. That was the promise he intended to keep. If this story is touching your heart, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that real change is proven through action. The days following the birth of the baby unfolded in a strange mixture of exhaustion and awe. James barely remembered eating. Time blurred into a cycle of short naps, whispered conversations, and the soft sounds of a newborn breathing. The farmhouse, once quiet and almost lonely, now pulsed with life. Sarah moved slowly but with a strength born of necessity. She rarely complained. Even when pain tightened her jaw, she pressed through it, focused entirely on the small bundle in her arms. James watched her constantly. "You need to rest," he said more than once. "And you need to stop hovering," she replied, not unkindly. He tried. Failed. Tried again. The baby, whom Sarah named Thomas, after her grandfather, seemed to sense James's presence. When James held him, the crying often stopped. When James spoke, Thomas's tiny fingers curled reflexively, as if reaching for something familiar. "He knows your voice," Sarah said one afternoon. James swallowed hard. "I wish I'd spoken to him sooner." "You're speaking now," she replied. "That's what counts." Word of the birth spread quickly. Neighbors who had once whispered now arrived quietly, bringing food, blankets, small handmade gifts. Some avoided James's eyes. Others met his gaze with cautious approval. Mrs. Parker stopped by again. She looked at the baby, then at James. "Well," she said. "Looks like you stayed." "I did," James replied. She nodded once. "Good." That was all. Emily did not come. But her absence felt final rather than threatening. James no longer wondered if she would return or interfere. That chapter had closed the moment he chose to remain on the land instead of chasing a version of himself that no longer existed. One evening, after Sarah and Thomas had fallen asleep, James sat alone at the kitchen table. He stared at his hands, scarred, cracked, dirty. These hands had signed contracts. Had shaken influential palms. Had once held ambition tightly. Now they held a child. And that felt infinitely heavier, and more meaningful. Sarah noticed the change in him over the following weeks. James didn't just help. He learned how to warm bottles. How to rock Thomas to sleep without waking him again. How to recognize different cries. "He's hungry," James said one night. Sarah looked surprised. "How do you know?" "He pulls his legs in when he's uncomfortable," James replied. "This cry is different." She smiled faintly. "You're paying attention." "I have to," he said. "I missed too much already." That night, Sarah watched him cradle Thomas in the dim lamplight, humming softly, and felt something loosen inside her chest. Fear didn't disappear. But it no longer ruled. The farm slowly settled into a new rhythm. James worked mornings and afternoons, staying close enough to hear if Sarah called. In the evenings, they sat together, sometimes talking, sometimes not. Silence no longer felt like distance. It felt like peace. One afternoon, Sarah surprised James by handing him a stack of old papers. "What's this?" he asked. "The deed. The tax records. Everything about the land." James frowned. "Why?" "Because if you're staying," she said quietly, "you should know what you're helping protect." He took the papers carefully, understanding the weight of the gesture. This wasn't forgiveness. But it was trust beginning to form. Meanwhile, outside pressure continued. James's former associates made one last attempt to lure him back. One man arrived in person, polished boots stark against the dirt road. "You're wasting yourself," the man said bluntly. "You could be more." James looked past him, toward the farmhouse. "I am more," he replied calmly. The man scoffed. "You're hiding." "No," James said. "I'm living." The man left shaking his head. That night, Sarah asked about the visit. James told her the truth. "And you didn't hesitate?" she asked. "No." She nodded. "That matters." As weeks turned into months, Thomas grew stronger. He smiled for the first time in James's arms. James froze, afraid to breathe. "Did you see that?" he whispered. Sarah laughed softly. "Yes." He smiled. James laughed too, full, unrestrained laughter he hadn't known he still possessed. That night, as they prepared for bed, Sarah spoke carefully. "You've changed," she said. "I had to," James replied. "No," she corrected gently. "You chose to." He met her eyes. "I choose it every day." She hesitated, then spoke the words he hadn't dared hope for yet. "I don't regret letting you stay." James didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached out and took her hand. "That means more than you know." Sarah squeezed his fingers. "We're not rebuilding what we had," she said. "We're building something new." "I understand. And it will take time." "I have time." She smiled, just slightly. That night, when Thomas cried, James got up first. Sarah watched him from the bed as he lifted their son with practiced ease. The sight stirred something deep and unexpected in her heart. Hope. Careful. Fragile. But real. If this story is touching you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Every chapter brings us closer to understanding what truly lasts. Trust does not return all at once. It arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, in the smallest of moments. For Sarah, it began the morning she woke to the sound of Thomas laughing. Not crying. Not fussing. Laughing. She sat up in bed, heart racing, and listened. James's voice floated in from the kitchen, low and playful, telling a story that made no sense at all, something about a stubborn old mule and a farmer who talked too much. Thomas responded with soft, bubbling giggles, the kind that came from pure safety. Sarah stood in the doorway and watched. James sat on the floor, back against the wall, their son cradled in his arms. He wasn't performing. He didn't notice her. He was simply there, present, patient, completely focused on the child. Something inside her shifted. Not forgiveness. But belief. Later that day, Sarah trusted James with something she hadn't trusted anyone with before. She asked him to stay alone with Thomas while she went into town. It was a small thing. But it felt enormous. "You'll be fine," she said, watching James carefully. "I know," he replied. "And if I'm not, I'll learn." She hesitated at the door, then nodded and left. James stood in the middle of the house, Thomas in his arms, suddenly aware of the responsibility resting against his chest. "It's just you and me now," he whispered. "We've got this." They did. When Sarah returned hours later, she found the house calm. Thomas slept peacefully in his crib. James sat at the table, writing. "What's that?" she asked. "Notes," he replied. "What worked? What didn't?" She blinked. "You wrote notes?" "Yes," he said simply. "I don't want to forget." She looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you," she said quietly. From then on, things changed gradually. Sarah began to include James in decisions, not big ones at first, but small, meaningful ones. Which field to rest? When to sell produce. How to prepare for winter. James listened more than he spoke. And when he did speak, it wasn't about expansion or ambition. It was about sustainability. That surprised her. One evening, as they sorted tools together, Sarah asked the question that had lingered in her mind for weeks. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" "The life you almost had," she said. "The influence. The status." James didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was calm. "I miss who I thought I had to be," he said. "But not who I actually was becoming." She nodded. That answer mattered. The town noticed, too. People stopped whispering when James passed. Some even greeted him. One afternoon, Mrs. Collins, once openly critical, approached Sarah at the market. "He's changed," the woman admitted reluctantly. Sarah didn't argue. She simply said, "He stayed." That was enough. Emily's shadow faded entirely. No letters. No rumors. No interference. She had moved on, or been forced to. James never asked. He had no desire to reopen closed doors. That winter came early. Snow dusted the fields, quieting the land. James worked tirelessly, insulating the house, repairing weak spots, preparing for the cold months ahead. One night, a pipe burst. Water flooded part of the kitchen. James was awake before Sarah even realized what had happened. By morning, the damage was contained. Sarah stared at the repaired pipe. "You didn't wake me," she said. "You needed sleep," he replied. "So did Thomas." She looked at him, then away. "Thank you." It was the first time she had said those words without restraint. As winter deepened, evenings grew longer. They spent more time together indoors. Talking. Remembering. Sometimes laughing. One night, Sarah found herself telling James about the fear she'd felt during pregnancy, how she'd spoken to her belly at night, promising her child that everything would be okay, even when she wasn't sure it would be. James listened, silent, eyes heavy. "I should have been there," he said. "Yes," she replied. "You should have." But there was no accusation in her voice. Only truth. One evening, Sarah surprised herself by asking, "Do you regret divorcing me?" James didn't hesitate. "I regret how I left," he said. "Not that we were honest with each other. We needed that break to see what we were losing." She considered his words. "Maybe," she admitted. "But honesty hurts." "It does," he agreed. "But lies hurt longer." That night, when Thomas woke crying, Sarah reached for him, then stopped. "Can you?" she asked James. "Always," he replied. She lay back down, listening as James soothed their son. Her eyes filled with quiet tears. Not of pain. Of relief. Trust, she realized, was learning to walk again. Slowly. Carefully. But on its own feet. If this story is speaking to you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that healing doesn't rush, it returns step by step. Spring arrived quietly, almost cautiously, as if the land itself was unsure whether it could trust warmth again. Snow melted into soft mud, fields darkened with promise, and the first green shoots began to push through the soil. The farm, once silent under winter's weight, came alive again. So did the challenges. James felt them immediately. Spring meant planting. Planting meant money. Money meant decisions. And decisions had once been the very thing that had driven him away. One morning, James stood with Sarah at the edge of the south field, studying the ground. "We can plant corn here," Sarah said. "It's safer. Less profit, but reliable." James nodded. "And the east field?" "Sorghum," she replied. If the rain holds. James hesitated. There was another option. A riskier one. A crop that could bring far more money if the market stayed strong. The old James would have pushed for it instantly. This time, he stayed quiet. What are you thinking? Sarah asked, noticing his pause. I'm thinking, he said carefully, that I don't want to gamble with our stability. She looked at him, surprised. That's new, she said. He smiled faintly. I know. They chose the safer route. The decision didn't make headlines. It didn't impress anyone. But it let them sleep at night. As weeks passed, James felt pressure building from every direction. Supplies cost more. Equipment broke. Labor was scarce. One afternoon, a man from town stopped by with an offer. He wore clean clothes, city shoes, and confidence. I hear you're back on the land, the man said casually. But you're sitting on wasted potential. James crossed his arms. How so? I can connect you with buyers, the man continued. Big buyers. But you'll need to scale up fast. Sarah stood a few steps behind James, listening. And the catch? James asked. The man smiled. Debt. Short-term pain. Long-term gain. James felt Sarah tense behind him. He remembered this pitch. He had once believed in it. No, James said simply. The man blinked. You didn't even ask the numbers. I don't need to, James replied. I know the cost. After the man left, Sarah spoke quietly. You could have said yes, she said. It would have helped. James turned to her. It would have helped now. And hurt later. She studied his face. You're choosing us, she said. Yes, he replied. Even when it's hard. That choice came with consequences. Money stayed tight. James sold personal items, his watch, his spare horse, tools he didn't need. Sarah noticed. You don't have to strip yourself bare, she said one evening. I already did, he replied gently. I'm just catching up. One night, Thomas fell ill. Nothing serious, but enough to scare them. James stayed awake, pacing the floor while Sarah held their son. Why is he crying like that? James asked, fear creeping into his voice. He's scared, Sarah said softly. Babies feel things. James swallowed. I don't want him to ever feel abandoned. Sarah looked at him. Then don't leave. I won't, he promised. That night, as Thomas finally slept, James sat alone on the porch. He thought about the life he could have had. The house in town. The dinners. The applause. And then he looked through the window at Sarah and their child. This was the price of staying. Uncertainty. Sacrifice. Quiet responsibility. And he paid it willingly. The town began to change its tune. Not because James proved himself loudly, but because he proved himself daily. He showed up. He worked. He stayed. An older farmer stopped him one afternoon. Most men talk about family, the man said. Few choose it when it costs them. James nodded. I learned too late. You learned, the man replied. That's what matters. Sarah felt the shift too. She noticed how neighbors treated James now. Not as a man who returned, but as a man who endured. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, Sarah spoke. I used to think love was enough, she said. Then I thought it wasn't. And now? James asked. Now I think love needs proof, she replied. And time. James reached for her hand. I have both, he said. She squeezed his fingers. Good, she replied. Because this life wasn't easy. But it was honest. And honesty, Sarah had learned, was worth far more than comfort. If this story is resonating with you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that real love is proven not in words, but in choices. Belonging was not something James had ever learned how to measure. In the city, belonging came with invitations, handshakes, and recognition. It came with knowing the right people, wearing the right clothes, saying the right things. It was loud, visible, and fragile. Out here, belonging was quiet. It showed itself in small, ordinary ways. In the way the soil felt under his boots. In the nods from neighbors who once looked away. In the sound of Thomas's laughter echoing through the farmhouse. James was beginning to understand the difference. One morning, as spring deepened into early summer, James woke before dawn to the sound of rain. Not the violent storms of winter, but a steady, patient rain that soaked into the ground. He stood on the porch, watching the fields drink it in. Sarah joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "This is good rain," she said. James nodded. "The kind you don't pray for. You're just grateful it comes." She smiled faintly. "You're learning the language of the land." "I had to unlearn another one first," he replied. They stood together in silence, listening. Later that day, James went into town for supplies. As he loaded sacks of grain onto the wagon, a familiar voice called out to him. "James Walker." He turned to see Mr. Henry Caldwell, a man who had once praised his ambition and encouraged him to leave the farm behind. "Didn't think I'd see you back here," Caldwell said, scanning James from head to toe. "Thought you were destined for bigger things." James met his gaze calmly. "I am." Caldwell scoffed. "This," he gestured toward the wagon. "This is small." James smiled, not bitterly, not defensively. "This is mine," he said. Caldwell studied him for a moment, then shook his head. "You gave up a lot." "Yes," James agreed. "And I gained more." Caldwell didn't understand. James didn't try to explain. That evening, Sarah prepared dinner while James fed Thomas. The baby babbled happily, grabbing at James's fingers with surprising strength. "He's getting stronger," Sarah said, watching. "So are you," James replied. She paused. "What makes you say that?" "You don't flinch anymore," he said gently. "Not when people talk. Not when things get hard." She considered this. "Maybe I stopped waiting for things to fall apart," she said. James nodded. "So did I." As summer approached, the farm demanded more of them. Longer days. Earlier mornings. Constant vigilance. James's body bore the marks of the work, bruises, calluses, exhaustion, but his mind felt clearer than it ever had. One night, after a particularly long day, James sat at the table staring at a stack of unpaid bills. Sarah noticed. "You're worried," she said. "I'm calculating," he replied. "There's a difference." She sat across from him. "Talk to me." "We're stable," he said. "But one bad harvest, one serious illness, and we'd be struggling." Sarah didn't argue. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we plan," James said. "Carefully. Together." She studied him, then nodded. They spent hours discussing possibilities, saving small amounts, setting aside emergency reserves, avoiding unnecessary risks. Not dreams of wealth. Plans for survival. For continuity. For their child. That night, as they lay in bed, Sarah spoke softly. "I never thought I'd hear you talk like this," she said. James turned toward her. "Like what?" "Like someone who's thinking about tomorrow instead of chasing something far away." He reached for her hand. "Tomorrow matters more now." She squeezed his fingers. That simple gesture carried more weight than any declaration of love. Weeks later, Thomas took his first unsteady steps. James witnessed it alone. He froze, afraid to scare him. "Easy," James whispered. Thomas wobbled forward, fell, then laughed. James laughed too, loud, uncontrollable laughter that startled the baby into laughing harder. When Sarah came running in, James barely managed to speak. "He walked," he said, voice thick. "He walked." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You saw it," she said softly. "Yes," James replied. "I didn't miss it." That mattered more than either of them said aloud. The town celebrated the moment in its own quiet way. Mrs. Parker brought over a loaf of bread. The Thompsons sent over extra milk. Small gestures. Meaningful ones. One afternoon, as James repaired the barn roof, he heard Sarah calling him urgently. He climbed down fast. "What is it?" She held Thomas close, her face pale. "He fell," she said. "Not badly, but..." James checked their son carefully, heart racing. Thomas blinked up at him, confused but unharmed. James exhaled shakily. Fear, he realized, was now part of love. Not fear of loss of status. Fear of loss of people. That night, James couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch again, staring at the dark fields. Sarah joined him quietly. "You're thinking too hard," she said. "I'm afraid," he admitted. She nodded. "So am I." He looked at her. "Of what?" "Of how much this matters now," she replied. "Because losing it would hurt more than anything we've been through." James took her hand. "Then we protect it," he said. "Every day." She leaned her head against his shoulder. For the first time in years, James felt rooted. Not trapped. Rooted. And that made all the difference. If this story is speaking to you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that sometimes the greatest success is simply knowing where you belong. Just when life began to feel steady, the past found a way to knock. It arrived quietly, disguised as routine, on an otherwise ordinary afternoon. James had just finished repairing a section of the barn roof when he noticed a familiar wagon turning down the dirt road that led to the farmhouse. He froze, the hammer still in his hand. He knew that wagon. The color. The shape. The driver. Emily Carter stepped down slowly, her dress immaculate despite the dust, her posture straight, composed, practiced. She looked almost untouched by time, as if the months that had aged everyone else had somehow passed her by. Sarah saw her too. She stood at the doorway, Thomas on her hip, her body instinctively tightening. James climbed down and wiped his hands on his pants. "I didn't expect you," he said carefully. Emily smiled politely, but there was tension behind it. "I didn't expect to be here," she replied. "But I needed to see things for myself." Sarah remained still, watching. Emily's eyes shifted briefly toward the child, then back to James. "So this is real," she said quietly. "Yes," James replied. "It is." Emily took a slow breath. "You look different." James nodded. "I am." She glanced at the farmhouse, the fields, the worn fences. "You chose this," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." Sarah finally spoke. "Is there something you need?" she asked calmly. Emily turned toward her, surprise flickering across her face. She had expected anger. Coldness. Not calm. "I came to understand," Emily said. "Not to cause trouble." Sarah studied her. "Understanding doesn't always bring peace," she replied. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "I know." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind moving gently through the fields. I lost everything, Emily said suddenly, looking at James. When you walked away, people didn't see sacrifice. They saw weakness. James didn't flinch. I'm sorry you were hurt, he said. But I won't apologize for staying. Emily's jaw tightened. I gave up opportunities for you, she said. I defended you. I didn't ask you to, James replied softly. That truth stung. Emily's gaze drifted back to Thomas. He looks healthy, she said. He is, Sarah replied. And loved. Emily swallowed. I won't pretend this doesn't hurt, she admitted. But I needed to see that you didn't leave me for nothing. James met her eyes. I didn't leave you. I chose responsibility. Emily laughed quietly. That sounds noble now. It's honest, he said. Emily looked between them, then down at the dirt. I won't interfere, she said finally. But I needed closure. Sarah nodded. We all did. Emily climbed back into her wagon. Before leaving, she turned one last time. Take care of what you chose, she said to James. I will, he replied. The wagon disappeared down the road, leaving silence in its wake. Sarah exhaled slowly. You okay? James asked. She nodded. Better than I thought. That night, Sarah sat alone with her thoughts. Emily's presence had stirred old insecurities, questions she thought she had buried. James noticed. You're quiet, he said gently. I was wondering, she admitted, if part of you ever regrets not choosing the easier path. James didn't hesitate. I regret nothing that led me here, he said. She studied him carefully. Even if this stays hard. Especially then, he replied. She nodded. That's the answer I needed. Later, as Thomas slept, Sarah spoke again. I don't forgive the past, she said quietly. But I trust the present. James reached for her hand. That's all I ask. Outside, the land lay still under the stars. The past had knocked. And for the first time, it no longer held power. If this chapter moved you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that closure doesn't come from going back, it comes from moving forward. After Emily left, the farm felt quieter than it had in months. Not because she had been loud, but because her presence reminded both James and Sarah of how fragile their peace once was. The past didn't need to shout. It only needed to appear. For 2 days, Sarah moved through her routines with a careful calm. She cooked, cleaned, tended the garden, and cared for Thomas with the same steady discipline she always had, but something in her eyes remained distant, as if she were measuring reality again, making sure it was still safe. James noticed. He didn't push. He simply stayed consistent. On the third evening, as the sun sank low and turned the fields golden, Sarah sat on the porch steps with Thomas in her lap. The child was chewing on a wooden spoon with all the determination in the world. James approached slowly and sat a few feet away, keeping his tone soft. She came for closure, he said. Sarah nodded. I could tell. I didn't invite her, James added quickly. I didn't even know she'd come. I believe you, Sarah replied. That was the first time she said it so plainly. James exhaled, relieved. Sarah watched the horizon for a long moment, then spoke. I used to think, she said quietly, that if I kept my heart locked up, nothing could break it. James didn't interrupt. But then Thomas was born, she continued. And I realized your heart can't stay locked forever. Not if you're going to live. James looked at her. And Emily showing up, Sarah's voice tightened slightly. It reminded me that the world doesn't stop just because we're trying to rebuild. James nodded. No. But we don't have to let it control us either. Sarah turned to him. Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if you'd married her? James shook his head immediately. Not anymore. She studied his face. I'm not asking to test you, she said. I'm asking because I need to know what's real. James leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. What's real, he said, is this porch. That field. That child. And you. Sarah's throat tightened. And what about us, she asked. The us that used to exist. James paused, choosing his words carefully. That us died, he said softly. And I'm glad it did. Because that us was full of pride and pressure and chasing things that didn't matter. Sarah's eyes flickered. So what do we have now? James looked at Thomas, then back at Sarah. We have something new, he said. Something earned. A quiet breeze passed between them. Thomas giggled suddenly, as if the conversation amused him, and Sarah laughed softly despite herself. That small laugh opened something. A door that had stayed shut for too long. That night, after Thomas fell asleep, Sarah remained on the porch. James joined her with 2 mugs of warm tea. They sat side by side, closer than they used to, their shoulders almost touching. Do you remember our first wedding? Sarah asked suddenly. James smiled faintly. I remember your dress. It was simple, she said. It was perfect, he replied. She looked down at her hands. I thought it would last forever. So did I, James admitted. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she asked the question James hadn't dared hope would come. Do you still want to be my husband? She asked, voice low. James froze. His heart pounded. He didn't answer quickly. Not because he didn't know, but because he felt the weight of how sacred the question was. Yes, he said finally. More than anything. Sarah nodded slowly. But, she continued, I need to know something. Anything, James said. If we try again, she said, and life becomes difficult, and the farm struggles, and the world offers you easier paths again, will you stay? James met her eyes. I will, he said firmly. Not because it's easy. Because it's right. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. And if I can't forgive everything, she whispered. If some part of the past always hurts. James reached for her hand. Then I'll live with that, he said. Because loving you isn't about demanding comfort. It's about choosing you anyway. Sarah squeezed his fingers, tears slipping down her cheeks. That's the first time, she said, that I've believed you completely. James felt his own eyes burning. He shifted closer. Sarah, he said carefully, I want to ask you something. She swallowed. What? James stood slowly and stepped in front of her. Sarah's breath caught. James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, simple, not expensive, but polished and clean. He knelt. Sarah covered her mouth instinctively. This ring isn't a symbol of perfection, James said quietly. It's a symbol of work. Of truth. Of showing up. Sarah trembled. I won't promise you a life without struggle, James continued. But I will promise you a life where you are not alone. He held up the ring. Will you marry me again? He asked. Not because of the past, but because of what we're building now. Sarah stared at him, shaking, tears falling freely. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, yes. James's breath broke like a dam. Yes, he repeated, almost disbelieving. Yes, Sarah said stronger. Yes, James. I will. James stood and pulled her into his arms carefully, holding her like she might disappear. They stayed there a long time, quiet and trembling, listening to the night sounds, letting the moment settle. Inside the house, Thomas stirred, then sighed back into sleep, unaware that his parents had just rebuilt something sacred. When Sarah finally pulled back, she touched James's face. "This time," she said softly, "we do it differently." James nodded. "This time, we keep choosing each other." She smiled through tears. "And this time," she said, "we choose peace over pride." If this chapter hit your heart, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. Tell us, do you believe people can truly change when love and responsibility collide? The engagement did not change everything overnight. If anything, it made both James and Sarah more careful. They didn't announce it to the town. They didn't celebrate with a gathering or a dinner. The ring stayed mostly hidden, tucked under Sarah's sleeve as if it were something fragile, still adjusting to the light. What changed first were the details. James stopped sleeping in the spare room. Not because Sarah asked him to, but because one night she simply said, "You can stay." He lay beside her stiffly at first, afraid to assume anything, afraid to rush what had taken so long to rebuild. They slept facing opposite directions that night. But neither of them felt alone. The following morning settled into a new rhythm. Coffee shared at the table. Thomas between them, tapping his spoon loudly as if demanding attention. Sarah planning the day's work. James listening, offering suggestions only when asked. They were learning how to be partners again, not husband and wife yet, but something closer than strangers and stronger than convenience. The town noticed. Mrs. Parker was the first to say it aloud. "Well," she said one afternoon, eyeing the ring on Sarah's hand. "Looks like you're serious this time." James nodded. "We are." She studied him for a long moment. "Then don't make me regret defending you," she said, half joking, half warning. "I won't," James replied. Word spread slowly but surely. Some people smiled. Some raised eyebrows. A few shook their heads in disbelief. "Men like that don't change," someone muttered at the market. Sarah heard it and didn't respond. She no longer needed to. What mattered was what happened inside the farmhouse, far from opinions and predictions. Planning the wedding was nothing like the first time. There were no grand ideas. No pressure to impress. Just questions. When? Who? How simple do we want this to be? Sarah surprised James one evening by saying, "I don't want a church." He looked up. "No. I want it here," she said. "On the land. Where we chose to stay." James smiled. "That feels right." They decided on late summer, after the harvest. Enough time to prepare, not enough time to overthink. Thomas became part of every conversation. "Will he sit with you?" James asked. "No," Sarah laughed. "He'll crawl wherever he wants." James grinned. Perfect. As plans formed, so did challenges. The barn roof collapsed partially during a storm, setting them back financially and emotionally. James worked day and night to repair it, refusing outside help at first. "You don't have to carry everything alone," Sarah reminded him. "I know," he said. "I just need to do this." She watched him closely. Not with suspicion. With concern. One evening, she took the hammer from his hand. "That's enough for today," she said firmly. He sighed. "It's not finished." "You are," she replied. That word, "you," landed differently now. He rested. And in doing so, learned another lesson he had missed before. Strength didn't mean exhaustion. It meant sustainability. Meanwhile, James's relationship with Thomas deepened in ways he never expected. The child followed him everywhere, toddling behind him with clumsy determination. "Looks like you've got a shadow," Sarah teased. James scooped Thomas up. "I'm honored." One night, as James rocked Thomas to sleep, he whispered promises into the quiet. "I'll be here when you fall. I'll be here when you're angry. I'll be here when life gets hard." Sarah listened from the doorway, her chest tightening with emotion. Those were promises she had once begged James to make. Now he made them freely. A month before the wedding, James's former commanding officer wrote to him. The letter was respectful. Tempting. There was an opportunity. Not permanent. Just a consulting role. High pay. Short term. James stared at the letter for a long time. That night, he showed it to Sarah. She read it silently, then handed it back. You don't have to decide right now, she said. Yes, I do, James replied. He folded the letter and placed it in the fire. Sarah watched the paper burn. You didn't even ask what I thought, she said gently. I know what you would say, he replied. And I know what I want. She reached for his hand. Thank you for choosing us again, she whispered. The closer the wedding came, the more reflective Sarah became. One night, she admitted something she'd never said aloud. I was afraid to marry you again, she said. I know, James replied. Not because you might leave, she continued. But because staying changes everything. It means I have to let go of being guarded. James nodded. And I have to live knowing I could hurt you again if I'm careless. They sat quietly. This is harder than walking away, Sarah said. Yes, James agreed. But it's worth more. The wedding day arrived warm and bright. No elaborate decorations. Just wildflowers. Wooden benches. The land stretching endlessly behind them. Friends. Neighbors. A few skeptical faces. Many hopeful ones. Thomas wore a tiny white shirt and crawled freely between chairs, delighting everyone. When Sarah walked toward James, there was no music. Just the sound of wind through the fields. James's eyes filled with tears. Not because of beauty. Because of memory. And forgiveness still in progress. The vows were simple. I promise to stay. I promise to listen. I promise to choose you, even when it's hard. No applause followed. Just quiet understanding. As they stood together, hand in hand, James felt something settle inside him. This wasn't a second chance. It was a new beginning built on truth. If this chapter moved you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that rebuilding takes courage, and choosing love takes even more. Marriage did not soften life. If anything, it revealed it more clearly. The morning after the wedding, James woke before sunrise out of habit. For a brief moment, he forgot where he was. Then he felt Sarah beside him, her breathing slow and steady, and the weight of the previous day returned, not as pressure, but as grounding. This was not celebration. This was commitment. He rose quietly, dressed, and stepped outside. The land stretched before him, unchanged by vows or rings. The fields did not care that he had married again. They cared only for work, weather, patience. Sarah joined him soon after, barefoot, wrapped in a shawl. Good morning, husband, she said softly. James smiled. Good morning, wife. They shared a quiet laugh. Thomas woke shortly after, demanding attention with loud insistence. Life resumed exactly where it had left off, feeding, cleaning, planning, fixing. That was when James understood something fundamental. Love wasn't proven on special days. It was proven on ordinary ones. As autumn approached, responsibilities multiplied. Harvest season was unforgiving, and the weather turned unpredictable. Some days yielded abundance. Others brought loss. One morning, frost damaged part of the crop. James stared at the ruined rows, jaw tight. We'll manage, Sarah said calmly. He nodded, though frustration burned. I know, he replied. It's just hard not to think what we could have done differently. Sarah placed a hand on his arm. Every season teaches us something. Even the harsh ones. That lesson would return often. The town, once skeptical, now treated them as a unit. Invitations came again, not grand ones, but meaningful ones. Dinners. Church gatherings. Help offered without being asked. James noticed something else too. People no longer referred to Sarah as the woman he left. They called her his wife. And they called him Thomas's father. Those titles mattered more than any rank he had once held. Still, life tested them. A machinery failure drained their savings unexpectedly. A neighbor fell ill, requiring James's help for weeks. Sarah grew tired more easily as the year wore on. One evening, overwhelmed, James snapped sharply at Sarah over something trivial. Silence followed. Immediately, regret washed over him. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. Sarah studied him. "You didn't use to apologize," she said. "I didn't use to listen," he replied. She nodded. "That's the difference." They talked late into the night, not to assign blame, but to understand the weight they were each carrying. That conversation mattered. Months passed. Thomas learned new words. New habits. New fears. One night, after a thunderstorm, he cried inconsolably. James held him, whispering reassurance. "It's okay," he murmured. "I'm here." The words weren't just for Thomas. They were for himself too. Sarah watched them from the doorway, heart full. Later, she admitted something she had never voiced. "I used to lie awake at night when you were gone," she said. "Wondering what I'd done wrong." James closed his eyes. "I didn't leave because of you," he said. "I left because I didn't know how to be present without losing myself." "And now?" she asked. "Now I know presence is who I am," he replied. Winter came early that year. Snow covered the land, quieting everything. Work slowed, but responsibilities didn't disappear. James spent evenings repairing tools, planning for spring, reading by lamplight while Sarah sewed. Peace filled the small house, not the loud kind, but the steady kind. One night, Sarah asked, "Do you ever fear it won't last?" James considered the question. "Yes," he said honestly. "But fear doesn't control my choices anymore." She smiled faintly. "That's all I ever wanted." Near the end of winter, Thomas fell seriously ill. Fever. Weakness. Fear. James didn't leave his side for 2 days straight. He held the child through the night, whispering stories, begging silently. When Thomas finally improved, James collapsed into a chair, exhausted. Sarah took his face in her hands. "You stayed," she whispered. "Even when you were terrified." James swallowed. "That's what fathers do." In that moment, Sarah realized something profound. The man beside her was not the man she had married the first time. He was stronger, not because he had more power, but because he had less pride. Spring returned again. Fields greened. Life renewed. James stood beside Sarah one morning, watching Thomas chase chickens clumsily. "This life isn't easy," James said. "No," Sarah replied. "But it's ours." He reached for her hand. "And I'll choose it," he said. "Every day." Sarah leaned into him. "That's all I ask." Because love, they had learned, was not a single decision. It was 1,000 small ones. Made daily. If this story is touching you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that the strongest love is the one that stays. Time did what it always did. It moved forward, quietly, steadily, without asking if anyone was ready. Years passed on the farm, not marked by calendars, but by harvests, storms, and the slow growth of a child who no longer needed to be carried on his father's hip. Thomas was 5 now. Old enough to ask questions that carried weight. One afternoon, While James repaired a broken fence post, Thomas sat on the ground beside him, tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick. "Dad?" the boy asked suddenly. James looked up. "Yeah, son. Why don't we live in town like Uncle Henry?" James paused, hammer in hand. "Well," he said carefully, "because this land is part of who we are." Thomas frowned. "Did you always live here?" James swallowed. "No," he said. "I left once." "Why?" Children had a way of asking questions adults spent years avoiding. James glanced toward the house. Sarah stood on the porch, pretending not to listen, but she was. "I thought I needed something else," James said slowly. "I thought being important meant being far away." Thomas considered that. "And now?" James smiled softly. "Now I know being here is what matters." Thomas nodded, seemingly satisfied, and went back to drawing. But James stayed still for a moment longer, struck by how easily truth came now, something that once felt impossible. That evening, Sarah joined him on the porch after Thomas went to sleep. "He's starting to notice things," she said gently. "I know," James replied. She hesitated, then spoke. "Someday, he'll ask about the time before you came back." James met her eyes. "I'll tell him the truth," he said. "All of it." Sarah studied him, then nodded. "That's all he'll need." Life continued with its familiar rhythm. There were years of abundance, and years when the land tested them. Drought once scorched half the crop. Another winter brought illness through the county. Repairs were constant. Money was often tight. But something had changed. They faced every challenge together. James no longer carried the weight alone. He spoke when he was overwhelmed. Asked for help. Accepted it. That change was not lost on Sarah. One night, after a particularly long day, she said quietly, "You don't disappear anymore." James turned to her. "I don't want to," he said. "Not from you. Not from this." She reached for his hand. "I used to fear silence," she admitted. "Because silence meant distance. And now? Now it feels like rest." Spring brought a new chapter. Sarah stood at the edge of the field one morning, hand resting on her stomach. James noticed immediately. "How long?" he asked softly. "A few weeks," she replied. "I wanted to be sure." James exhaled slowly, emotion flooding his chest. Another child. Another chance to do things right from the beginning. He knelt before her, resting his forehead against her belly. "I promise," he whispered. "This one will never doubt whether they're loved." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "They already are," she said. Pregnancy changed the household again. James took on more physical labor, refusing to let Sarah strain herself. Thomas followed him everywhere, determined to help. One afternoon, James caught the boy struggling to lift a bucket. "Easy there," James laughed, taking it from him. "I'm strong," Thomas insisted. James crouched beside him. "Being strong doesn't mean carrying everything alone," he said. "It means knowing when to ask for help." Thomas looked thoughtful. "Like you." James smiled. "Exactly like me." That lesson mattered more than James realized. The new baby arrived in early autumn. A girl. Small, fierce, and loud. They named her Eleanor. James held her with the same reverence he had held Thomas years before, but this time, without fear. He had learned. Sarah watched him from the bed, exhausted but smiling. "You look different this time," she said. James glanced at the child in his arms. "I feel different," he replied. "I'm not afraid anymore." Eleanor grew quickly, bringing new chaos and joy. Thomas became a proud older brother, fiercely protective. James found himself laughing more than he ever had. Not the polite laughter of town dinners, but deep, unguarded laughter that came from belonging. One evening, as the sun dipped low, James and Sarah sat watching the children play in the yard. "Do you ever miss it?" Sarah asked quietly. "The city?" James considered. "No," he said. "I miss who I thought I needed to be there. But I don't miss the place." Sarah nodded. "I used to think success meant escaping this life," she said. "Now I think success is staying and choosing it." James turned to her. "You taught me that." She shook her head. "No," she said softly. "You learned it when you were ready." Years continued to unfold. Thomas grew taller. Eleanor learned to walk. The land changed, but endured. James began mentoring younger farmers in the area, offering guidance without control. His past reputation as a rigid colonel faded, replaced by something quieter, but more respected. He was known now as a man who kept his word. A man who stayed. One afternoon, an old acquaintance from town visited. "You ever regret giving it all up?" the man asked. James looked around at the fields, the house, the children's laughter drifting on the wind. "No," he said firmly. "I regret waiting so long to come back." The man shook his head, puzzled. James only smiled. Some truths could not be explained. They had to be lived. If this story is resonating with you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, leave a like, and comment where you're watching from. These are stories about loss, return, and the quiet power of choosing love. There comes a season in life when things stop demanding proof. When the work you've done, quietly, consistently, begins to speak for itself. James felt that season arrive not with celebration, but with stillness. He noticed it one morning while standing at the edge of the field, watching Thomas help Eleanor gather fallen branches. The boy moved with confidence now, steady hands and thoughtful pauses, careful not to rush his younger sister. James realized something then. The boy was no longer copying him. He was becoming himself. That truth carried both pride and humility. Later that day, Sarah joined James in the barn, where he was repairing an old plow. "You've been quiet," she said. James wiped his hands on a rag. "I was thinking," he replied, "about how different things feel now." Sarah leaned against the doorway. "Different how?" "Lighter," he said after a moment. "Not easier. Just, settled." Sarah smiled softly. "That's what peace feels like." Peace had once frightened James. It felt too much like stagnation. Now he understood it wasn't absence of movement, it was harmony within it. Life continued, full but grounded. Thomas began attending the small schoolhouse in town. Eleanor followed a year later, clutching Sarah's hand nervously on her first day. James walked them both to the gate. "You'll do great," he told her. "What if I miss you?" Eleanor asked. James crouched to her level. "Then remember," he said gently, "I'll be right here when you come back." She nodded, comforted. That promise extended beyond childhood. James made it a point to be present. Not just physically, but attentively. He attended school meetings, church events, community gatherings he once avoided. Not to be seen, but to belong. One autumn evening, James sat with Sarah on the porch as the children slept inside. "Do you ever think about who you were?" Sarah asked quietly. James considered the question. "I remember him," he said. "But he doesn't feel like me anymore." "Do you forgive him?" James exhaled. "I'm learning to." Sarah took his hand. "That's important," she said. "Because he brought you here." James nodded. Without that man's mistakes, he wouldn't have learned how deeply staying mattered. Years passed. The children grew. Thomas entered adolescence with thoughtful seriousness. Eleanor blossomed with curiosity and empathy. James watched them navigate conflicts, friendships, disappointments. He resisted the urge to control outcomes. Instead, he listened. One night, Thomas came to him troubled. "Dad," he said hesitantly. "What if I want something different?" James looked at his son. "Different from what?" he asked. "From this," Thomas said. "From the farm. From staying." James felt a flicker of something old, but he didn't let it guide him. "You're allowed to want different things," he said calmly. "The only thing that matters is knowing why you want them." Thomas frowned. "What do you mean?" James thought for a moment. "If you leave because you're running from something," he said, "you'll carry it with you. But if you leave because you're growing towards something, you'll always know where home is." Thomas absorbed that silently. "You'll never disappoint me for choosing your own path," James added. The boy's shoulders relaxed. That conversation marked a turning point. James realized he had broken a cycle, not through force, but through permission. Sarah noticed it too. "You didn't try to hold him here," she said later. "No," James replied. "I just showed him what staying can look like." Winter returned again. Snow blanketed the fields. Work slowed. Evening stretched long and quiet. James found himself reading by the fire while Sarah sewed, Eleanor drawing nearby, Thomas absorbed in books of his own. There was no urgency. No proving. Only presence. One particularly cold night, the power went out. They lit candles and gathered together in the living room. James told stories of his childhood, carefully, honestly. Not glorifying the past. Not hiding its flaws. The children listened, rapt. "That's why you left?" Eleanor asked softly. "Yes," James said. "And that's why I came back." "Are you glad you did?" she asked. James looked around at them. Every single day. Spring brought unexpected news. James's father, long absent, passed away quietly in town. James attended the funeral alone. Standing at the grave, he felt sorrow, but not regret. Their reconciliation had been enough. Later that evening, Sarah asked how he felt. "Sad," he said. "But at peace." That peace followed him home. James realized something profound. Closure wasn't always about words. Sometimes it was about living differently. As the years continued, James aged visibly. Hair silvered. Steps slowed. But his presence remained steady. He became the man people came to, not for commands, but for counsel. "You don't tell people what to do," a neighbor once said. James smiled. "I just help them hear themselves." That philosophy guided everything now. One summer afternoon, James sat with Sarah under the old oak tree. "We've lived many lives together," she said. James nodded. "And somehow," she added, "this one feels the truest." He squeezed her hand. "It is." They sat in silence, content. No longing. No chasing. Only gratitude. James thought back to the man he once was, ambitious, restless, certain that more lay elsewhere. And then he looked at the life before him. This was more. If this story is speaking to you, subscribe to Stories of the Season, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. These stories remind us that fulfillment often arrives when we stop running. There are moments in life that circle back. Not as punishment. As reminders. James discovered that one late afternoon, years after everything had changed, when he rode along the edge of the very same field where he had once frozen at the sight of Sarah carrying sugarcane with a swollen belly. The land looked different now. The fence line was straighter. The soil was better cared for. The path was smoother. But the memory remained sharp. James rode slowly, his posture relaxed, older now, no longer carrying the rigid stiffness of a man defined by rank. He wore plain work clothes, a worn hat, and boots scarred by years of honest labor. Thomas, now nearly grown, rode beside him on a smaller horse. He carried himself with the steady confidence of someone raised with both discipline and love. Behind them, Eleanor's laughter floated on the wind as she chased a stray chicken near the barn with the stubborn joy of childhood. James smiled to himself. And then he saw her. A young woman at the far edge of the field, struggling under the weight of bundled cane. She walked slowly, hunched forward, her breath visible in short puffs. James's hand tightened instinctively on the reins. He wasn't alarmed yet. Then the woman stepped into clearer view. Her belly. Rounded. Heavy. Pregnant. James felt the same old chill, not because he was reliving the past exactly, but because the image carried the same meaning. Hardship. Loneliness. A woman carrying more than she should. Thomas noticed his father's posture change. "Dad?" he asked. "What is it?" James didn't answer immediately. He nudged his horse forward. As they approached, the young woman looked up suddenly, startled. Sweat shone on her forehead. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, strands clinging to her cheeks. She tried to straighten. "I'm sorry," she blurted. I didn't know this land was." James held up a hand calmly. "It's all right," he said. "Who are you?" She hesitated, then answered. "My name is Lily," she said. "I'm staying with my aunt down the road. I was helping her gather cane before the rain hits." James's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you're pregnant?" Lily's shoulders tightened. "Yes." "Why are you carrying that alone?" James asked. Lily's chin lifted stubbornly. "Because that's what needs to be done," she replied. "And because I don't have anyone else to do it." James felt something tighten in his chest. Thomas watched silently, sensing the weight of the moment even without understanding the history behind it. James dismounted smoothly, despite his age, and reached for the bundled cane. "No," Lily protested. "I can manage." James's voice remained firm but gentle. "You shouldn't have to." He lifted the bundle with practiced ease and carried it toward the barn. Lily hurried after him, half angry, half embarrassed. "You don't know me," she said. "You don't need to." "I know enough," James replied. "You're doing too much alone." Lily's jaw tightened. "And what choice do I have?" James set the bundle down carefully, then turned to face her. "You have more choice than you think," he said. Lily's eyes flickered. Thomas stepped forward. "Ma'am," Thomas said politely, "we can help. My dad's not the type to walk away." James's throat tightened at hearing his son say those words so naturally. Not the type to walk away. That phrase meant everything. Lily looked between them, suspicion and exhaustion battling in her expression. "People always say that," she whispered. James nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "They do." He glanced toward the farmhouse in the distance. "And some mean it. Some don't. But the only way you'll know is by what they do, not what they say." Lily swallowed. "What do you want from me?" she asked defensively. James shook his head. "Nothing," he replied. "I just want you to have help." They walked back toward her aunt's place with the remaining cane, Thomas carrying part of the load now. On the way, Lily spoke quietly, as if the words were falling out before she could stop them. "The baby's father left," she confessed. "He said he wasn't ready. He said I'd ruin his future." James felt anger rise, old anger, familiar anger. But he kept it contained. "Did he know you were pregnant?" James asked. "Yes," Lily whispered. Thomas clenched his jaw, looking ahead. Lily continued. "He said he'd send money," she said. "Maybe. If he could. But I don't want money. I wanted him to care. James's chest tightened. He had once been that man. Not exactly. But close enough. When they arrived at the small house where Lily lived with her aunt, an older woman stepped out onto the porch, startled by the sight of James and Thomas. "Who are you?"